guys, this is Sydney
and Tatum,
and welcome back to the Welcome Table. Today we are joined by the lovely senior analyst in the School of Biological Sciences, Erica Turley-De Villa. Along with assisting faculty and graduate students to submit proposals to fund their research, she is also committed to volunteering as education chair of the group Academic and Professional Women at UCI, where her primary focus is on creating the new video series, Amplify Women of UCI, Hearing Our Stories. We'll talk more about the series, your work, and everything else about you more during the interview. But for now, how are you doing?
I'm well. Thank you, ladies, for having me. I'm very excited.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming on. And before we get started, we always do like a little show and tell. And this week we will go first. I brought something more so to hold myself accountable to actually use them. Last year I bought roller skates. So yeah, in the height of the whole pandemic, when everybody was like, oh, time to do hobbies, I decided my hobby was going to be roller skating. And like everybody else, they decided that their hobby was going to be roller skating too. So it took about 7 months for these to get to me, and I finally got them. And I have not ridden them yet, so I decided to bring these as a promise to myself.
They're so cute, though.
To ride
They're so cute.
Yeah, I mean, look at the inside. Like,
I love it.
I really made a good decision with these. I just I need to use them.
They
So
look
that is
amazing.
my item for this week. And then what did you bring?
Well, I wanted to ask you, so are you planning on roller skating indoors or outdoors?
A little bit of both. You know, I've been terrorizing my family like inside my house just with my headphones on listening to disco music, and they've just been like, what are you doing? But like I more so mean like outside in the community, because I don't know, I get scared of judgment, but also I just look cool because I have pink skates on, so I need not be scared to do that. So
yeah. For my show and tell, I brought my Bible. This is my big girl. I brought her for two reasons. One, because I'm a Christian and that's very important for me. And also because I love books. I'm a huge bibliophile and nerd. I go to book conferences and literary conferences.
Yes.
Do you?
Yes, you know what? My very first one was with my mom. I went to a Lord of the Rings conference.
That's awesome.
I'm so embarrassed.
Sophie, I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I went when I was very young too, like probably like 6, 7. But I loved books, and I loved that series from a time when I was very, very young. So believe it or not, yeah, that was like my very first one.
That's awesome. Don't be embarrassed. I would have gone with my elf ears. You would have been embarrassed.
I love that. I love that so much. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Especially religion, of course, that's super, super important. But thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And so we're just going to dive right into the interview. I think that I said in your introduction that you are a senior analyst in the School of Biological Sciences, but you've spent 6 years at UCI, and prior to your role in research and development with BioSci, you originally worked in the schools of medicine and engineering. Can you tell us a little bit more about your career trajectory at UCI?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it appears to be every 2 years I go to a new school, I just realized, but I spent my first 2 years at School of Medicine. Prior to coming to UCI, I came from the corporate world. I worked at Marriott most recently as a senior director of finance and accounting. Okay. So I needed something that required less of my time so I could be around more for my children. And at the same time, I was tired of working really hard to make other people rich, especially since money is not that important to me. But so I ended up deciding higher education is where I wanted to work, and I came to UCI. I started off in a position a little bit lower than what I was going for, but that's what happens when you're starting over. So in medicine, I primarily did post awards, which is more finance and accounting for the professors and general accounts. I went to the School of Engineering, so I can also learn how to do the job I'm doing right now, which is the pre-awards, helping the professors apply for funding. And that's solely what I do now at BioSci.
Nice.
That's awesome. That's really important work too. And I love what you mentioned about starting over. I think that's so important to, I guess, internalize and apply to your life in many different respects. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit? Just like the art of starting over?
Yeah. That time period was starting over in a lot of areas for me because I was going through a divorce as well. And we went from a major move from Hawaii back to California. So there was a lot of starting overs for me and my children at that moment. So the art of starting over is to, I say primarily, number one, give yourself grace and understand that is going to be really rough at times, but that's just know it's going to happen and give yourself grace and just keeping that one step at a time, just move forward. And if you need to take a break, stand still and then move forward again.
That's great advice for anybody in life, starting over, going to a new phase of their life. Like us, we're getting ready to graduate. So it's a lot of there's a lot of new changes ahead of us. So yeah, I'll definitely take that and apply that to my own career trajectory.
Exactly. So. Very, very important. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. Yeah. And then our second question is, can you tell us a typical day in your current position as a senior analyst in the School of Biological Sciences?
Sure. Well, of course, it's a little different now, working from home because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But still, I work with the faculty a lot in the School of Biological Sciences. So my day is pretty much on the computer. Like almost 100% of the time I'm on the computer, engaging in emails or in meetings, collecting information I need from them. I read through funding opportunities, FOAs, funding opportunity announcements from different agencies. And then I read all of the application instructions and guides to make sure that everything gets followed so that the professors can focus on writing. They're supposed to be aware of everything in the application and the guides as well, but they can trust that we are also reviewing that so they can focus on the writing. And then I just go through, make sure everything's there and we submit.
Right, okay. And then, I mean, obviously, mostly everybody is all virtual. Everyone's working on the computers.
Yes.
And as you explained, that's the majority of what you do during your like a typical work day. What's some brief advice you could give for professionals that are just honed? And I know it's really difficult for me, even as a student, to remain focused and to keep my head on straight, make sure I'm not, you know what I mean? So what's some advice you could give for people who are, working through the pandemic?
Sure. Some advice that I need to follow as well would be to set yourself little timers on your phone or on your computer, so that at minimum you're resting your eyes once an hour, because people like me, you start to ruin your vision. So looking at a distance instead of looking up close at your computer, taking those breaths, stopping, breathing, a couple of minute meditation, stretching, getting up, even just walking around your house a little bit to stretch your legs. I think we really need to be careful of forming blood clots right now as well, since we're sitting so much. So we'll focus on getting up and moving, and trying different locations from time to time. See, maybe one day you're not in the mood to sit at the desk. It's not, you're not being productive. Find another spot.
Right. Well, that is great advice. Especially the eye thing, because me, I'm just
Yeah.
the whole and yeah, we have several classes throughout the day, so I'll definitely be taking that advice. Thank you for sharing that. Our next question goes into another role that you have which is with the Academic and Professional Women of UCI. What made you decide to join them, and then what led to your role as education chair?
Okay. My friend Tanya is the
Tanya Bradford?
No.
Oh,
no, not Tanya Bradford.
I got way too excited. I'm sorry. Sorry.
I had to pause and think, oh, wait, is that her last name? No, different Tanya. Tanya Zabalegui. She's in the division of, I forget what it's called, the outside education part. Anyways, she's co-chair for Academic and Professional Women. And I went to one of their events about 3 or 4 years ago. It was the end of the event. We just kind of chit-chatted a little bit. We talked about books. And she's the one that took me on my first to my first book conference. And we became friends, and she asked me if I would be on the board, and it took me a few months before I said okay, because I knew that was going to be additional work and I wanted to do something productive, not just sit on the board. So I think around April 2019 I finally said yes and I joined. Yay.
So it was like your friend that kind of led to that,
yes,
you joining. That's awesome. Friendships are the start of everything. Tatum and I had a similar experience with our podcast Black Fam 2.5 and then now the Welcome Table. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, no, it's so awesome to work with your friends, for sure.
It is.
Yeah.
Because Tanya is also my co-creator for Amplify too. Nice. So yeah, we are like you two. We get to spend more time together. We're just old.
Yeah, it's so fun. Yeah, no, it's always fun. But we actually wanted to ask more about that. For people who don't know what that event is, can you explain to our audience how that event came about, why you decided that was something that needed a space, and how they could watch it?
Sure. So it literally came out of Floyd's murder. Mm-hmm. I actually haven't watched the video because I don't need to see that, but I was angry enough without it. So it literally came out of that. I just, like so many other people, I was just angry because we're still just getting lynched. And it's okay for people to do that to us. So I did a little bit of writing, and then I try to like bring it in. And I started having ideas for Amplify. And a lot of my ideas are too big for one person. So I had a feeling my friend Tanya, because she is Latinx, Colombian American. So I had a feeling she'd be interested, and she was. So she became my co-creator, and we just took off from there. So for those who don't know what Amplify is, it's for women to tell their stories, stories of discrimination, racial profiling, police racial profiling. The discrimination can be racial, it can be gender, it could be disabilities, it could be immigration, it could be anything. So ageism is another one. So our initial focus was on Black women. And then we wanted to incorporate Asian women, which we did in the fall, because in addition to us being killed, the attack on Asians in the country had gone up exponentially, as people are now paying attention to, thank goodness, from the careless words of Corona flu or China flu and stuff like that. Right. So, so I took my anger and I turned it to something that people could hear, if that makes sense. Right. Because I could very easily yell at people, but we have people who are doing that for us. We have the protesters, we have the marchers, we have people on the bullhorns, we have the people talking back loud. And so I'm one of the ones who's able to kind of like sneak in under the door quietly. Right. So to me, that's what Amplify is. It's not sneaking though, but it is presenting something in a way that doesn't automatically turn people off. It's more engaging.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to an educational space and creating space for these kinds of conversations to exist. And I think that's so very important.
That's super.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's interesting that that Amplify Women came about that way through George Floyd's murder, because that's how our show came about as well. Mm-hmm. Our supervisor actually pitched the show to us and gave us this opportunity because she saw a need for these kinds of discussions and these kinds of interactions to happen. So
Yes.
We definitely understand what you mean by that. It's very, very important work.
Yes.
And I like that the focus has shifted, you know what I mean? Especially from Black women incorporating AAP, the AAPI community. I think that the hate crime rate has, I'm not sure the exact statistics, but has doubled or like tripled in the past year. And it's just insane. And I'm curious, how do you guys find the guests that you guys bring onto your show, besides obviously the race? Like what else do you guys look for when scouting for people?
Well, so in the beginning it was kind of easy to find people. It was just getting people who weren't going to be scared to, because it was new and they had no idea what we were talking about and they didn't want to be thrown out there to the wolves. So in the beginning, there were lots of conversations going on campus with the Black staff and faculty, and a couple of our librarians, Dr. Tuivo Dang and Dr. Crystal Trebet, put together an organization or a meeting space for Black women and AAPI women to come and talk as well. So there was lots of places for me to see women, oh, I forgot about you, and jot down their names. And if there's time, I'd shoot them a message in the chat, and I would just start writing names. That's how it started. And then from there, we ask people to give us recommendations. And so we do that as well. And so like you ladies were recommended to us by your faculty, Professor Erica Hayasaki. And we're so excited.
I love her.
Yeah, we do too. And so we're so excited. You're going to be our first undergraduate student guest. Thank you.
We're so excited. Such a privilege. We're just gonna talk. We have so many stories. So many stories. So it's gonna be amazing. And I think that Tatum and I are both in a place where we feel comfortable to have these conversations because of faculty members like Erica and like you, who like help us tell our stories in a way. I think that my time as an undergrad has changed so significantly, especially with the sadly the killing of George Floyd. You know, I just think that there's so much change, and I'm so happy that we get to tell our stories with platforms like the Welcome Table and Amplify. So yeah, I'm really excited.
You ladies get to leave your mark here before you leave. That's excellent.
Yeah, it's such an honor. Thank you so much. Yeah, and we wanted to actually know, like, what was the conversation that you've had thus far during your time with Amplify Women that has really stuck with you?
Oh, well, you know, all of our guests so far, I have been amazed, surprised, and shocked. And women that I've been working with for a year or more, I'm like, I didn't know that. So I've had at least one story stick with me for all of them. One of which was one of our first guests. She talked about both of her parents were technically disabled, classified as disabled, but her father was a lifeguard. I can't remember if he was a lifeguard at the beach or the pool. And I think she said he was an Olympiad too. I just remember thinking he was very physical and athletic for being classified as a disabled person. And I've had stories of people immigrating here from Asian countries, either coming through the Midwest or the North Pacific and being called chinks and all these names. And I'm like, really? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. We have a tendency to think about ourselves and the things that happen to us, and we kind of forget about other people. So I've learned a lot from all of them.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's very easy to think that you have like the saddest story in the world, you know.
Yes.
Understands your plight, but I think in talking to people, we have a lot more similarities than differences, and that's something that we've definitely learned through our conversations on the Welcome Table too, where, you know, you're talking to somebody who's of like academic or professional prestige, and you get to know them as a person, and they're just like you know. It's really nice to do that.
It is.
And then going into a little bit more about Amplify. So I think we talked a little bit about target audience, and we also talked about the goal of the series. But what if I were watching the series, right, what is something that you would want for your audience members to like take away from that experience of like seeing and hearing discriminatory stories about police brutality, everything. So what do you think that people should take away, and what would you want them to take away?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. That's a good question. I want people to take away first what something that Tatum just said, walking away, realizing that it's that kind of thing doesn't just happen to you, which is one of our goals, actually. We're trying to build community so that the women who have experienced, some have been straight out atrocities, so it could be healing for them to share, but also for those hearing it can have that Me Too moment and feel like, okay, it's not just me. That's one of the things. We want people to walk away knowing that their experience in life isn't the only way to experience the United States. To just, you don't have to agree on everything, but to be open to the possibility that other people experience this country in a different way than you do.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I was just talking with my mom about that the other day. Like everyone has a different narrative that they look at life through, and they have a different lens, a different perspective, and it's directly shaped from the environmental circumstances. But when you're in an environment where you're treated differently based off things that are out of your control, it makes everything different. It makes everything just, I don't know, like, I was gonna say crazy, but it really just makes it interesting. It really does. And to find that there's people who go through similar and worse, or similar and better experiences than you, it's a life-changing experience.
Absolutely. And that's what we're hoping for. Although the stories are primarily women, or are just women, and we have women spelled with the X so that it is all inclusive and we're not excluding anybody from the LGBT plus community. We don't want to do that. But we want others to hear the stories as well, because it's important for men to understand what women go through as well. There's a reason why people say that Black women have had the worst experience in this country out of anybody. And people can agree or disagree, but just hear some of the stories of why people believe that. So that's literally all we're saying, is just listen. And then our current goal right now is we're expanding. So originally we just had faculty and staff and retirees as storytellers. Now we're expanding to include undergraduate students such as yourself and alumni. Great. So yeah, we're very excited about that. And we might even extend it to the local community because for UCI, it's very important, the local community, and we do a lot of outreach with them. So we might do that as well.
Nice. Okay. I'm glad to hear that, because everybody has stories everywhere. And I just think that it's going to be amazing once there's like this accumulation of all the stories put together and people can just watch them. It's going to be an experience for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, stories definitely like hold us together. You know, that's something that we've learned within our major and like through, you know, this job that we have. And I'm sure you too, like it's really something that keeps us together during hard times, you know. So, yeah, so glad you're expanding. That's really, really awesome. And to kind of start to close out the interview, we wanted to know more about you as a person, and we wanted to know what is something that brings you joy that not many people know about.
Okay. Well, a couple of things jump to mind. The good Erica would say serving people, which is true. That does bring me joy. But I don't feel like doing that all the time. The nerdy side of Erica would say going to cons like WonderCon.
Oh, that's so cool.
Cosplay, playing dress up is what we called it in my day. Yeah, two of my, well, I'm down to one kid now who still does it out of the three. Yeah, and we're taking pictures now in our cosplay because we can't go to cons. So that brings a lot of joy. It's fun, and reading the comic books and watching the movies and the TV shows.
That's awesome. Who's your favorite person to cosplay? or characters?
Probably elves. Any elves.
Oh my God.
Lord of the
Mhm.
Rings.
I know.
I
Nice.
do like elves.
Oh, I love that so much.
That's so
so
cute. She
awesome.
loves it.
Love that.
I'm like, ooh, I love it.
It's been fun.
Yeah, this conversation has really made me laugh. I've had so much fun, and I almost don't want to stop talking to you, but sadly, we must stop talking. We must end it. So, our last question would be, are there any future goals that you're working towards that we could share? Why did I say it like that?
It's okay.
That you could share. I'm sorry. That you-
Sure. Like project goals or personal goals?
yeah, both. I would love to hear about both.
Project goals. I have like 100,000 projects always list available. So right now the main focus is expanding Amplify. And after we get that, because it's still, since it's so new, as you ladies understand, it's still kind of getting its foundation up under it. So after that gets settled, I'm looking to figure out what I can do with human trafficking and the immigrant children here that are still separated from their parents. That is just not acceptable. It is so not acceptable. So I actually don't have ideas for those two yet, but those I'm working on.
Yeah, future.
Those are definitely my passion. That's the next thing I'm working on.
Those are huge.
They are. That's
Yeah.
Yeah. The facilities are still filled with those babies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I can't even. That's a whole nother conversation in of itself. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing those two projects with us. If they do come to fruition, I will be the first one in line to watch, read, anything like that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, those are just amazing projects, and we're looking forward to seeing those in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, they will come. They will come.
They will come. Well, thank you so much, Erica, for this interview. It really made me laugh. I had such a great time.
Well, thank you, ladies. You're a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of The Welcome Table. This has been Tatum
And Sydney.
and we will see you next time. Bye.